Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuitboo Horror Reviews, here with a collection update video. Oh god, kill me. Whew. Most of this stuff is from the Severin mid-year sale, where they got fucking like DDoSed like twice, and the site crashed a bunch of times. It was very funny. I say very funny, but it wasn't. It was painful, because I stayed up till 4 a.m. trying to fucking pre-order shit, and it just didn't go well. Either way, every order came with a convention lanyard and, little Severin mid-year kind of pass, as well as a thing on the back for if you put in 10 order numbers and then you send it to them through their email address, they will send you a free Blu-ray or DVD of your choice. I don't know how long this thing is going to go on for, if this is like only till the end of the year, if this is like literally just until you get for your next 10, like literally just until you get your next 10 orders in, or if it's, only until like maybe the end of 2021. I don't know, but still a pretty cool little promotion. I mean, you'd have to spend a minimum of like $60 in order to get all 10 of these codes. Or no, wait, not $60. You'd have to spend $100 to get all 10 of these codes. So, I mean, it would definitely be worth the free Blu-ray, for Severin, because it's literally one Blu-ray out of, all this shit. And I'm sure that, you're not gonna be able to get your hands on like the Manson Family, which is out of print. Although if that is the case, I would most definitely like a Blu-ray copy of the Manson Family, because I know they still have copies. I've watched the Severin seller. Either way, mostly Severin stuff for this update. There's some stuff that I'm gonna talk about at the end, some other stuff that I've picked up recently, but for the most part, it is this stuff right here. So let's just dive right in with the first title, The Beast in Heat, which I watched this one the other night. This one's okay. It's mostly kind of a World War II like adventure title with partisans trying to get the Nazis out of this small Italian village, which is just like, it's whatever. Or maybe it's not an Italian village. I can't remember what it is exactly. But this is one of the original Video Nasties. This was banned in the UK. And I don't think it's ever been re-released there. It might have been. But this is the first time it's ever been on Blu-ray, which is cool. It's always great when an obscure little film gets a Blu-ray release. This movie isn't anything too amazing. I don't regret buying it necessarily. But I do, but I don't think I would recommend The Beast in Heat. I've also heard that this film is like an extremely nasty little film, and there's definitely some really, really rough, disturbing moments in this movie. But I would argue it's not as bad as like The Gestapo's Last Orgy, which Severin also has the rights to, and they should totally put on Blu-ray because it's only available on DVD for some fucking reason. But like the Gestapo's Last Orgy is one that's like, I would argue even worse. That movie is just Salo, but with Nazis instead of fascist Italians. Another one we got is All the Colors of the Dark, the Sergio Leone, Sergio Martino Giallo title. And comes with the soundtrack on CD, which is really cool. I can appreciate that. I wasn't too interested in this film when they released it on Blu-ray, but then I heard some things about it. I heard it was like a very weird, sleazy, violent, disturbing, kind of psychosexual, satanic nightmare, and that definitely interested me. And I also found out that the director also did Torso, which I thought was a really, really great little kind of giallo type film. And I also ended up seeing another film from this director that they released, another giallo, that he did before this one called The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, which that one was pretty damn good. Like, I randomly watched that one, and I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then I went to go, like, give it a rating, and I realized that it was on my watch list. I don't know when I put it on my watch list, but it was on there. So I was like, I guess I must have had a reason to put it on my watch list because I watched it and it was good. So I'm hoping that this is even more interesting because I've heard that this is like one of the most violent and disturbing kind of giallo films out there. It's also like apparently very beautifully shot, and the visual aesthetics are really nice. So I'm down with that. Next, we got Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals, which I got the slipcover version, which I will take the slipcover off because it has Laura Genser's tits on it, and as nice as they are, I don't want to be showing that on my channel. Yeah, Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals. Not too big on the Emmanuel films. I've actually think I've only seen this one, and it doesn't count as an Emmanuel film, but it was released as one. It's Violence in a Women's Prison. That was like released as like Emmanuel Behind Bars or something like that. But like, I'm not the biggest fan of the Emmanuel films, specifically the Joe D'Amato Black Emmanuel films. I haven't seen the original French Emmanuel film. I don't really plan to. It doesn't seem like my kind of thing. But I do plan on checking out Emmanuel in America eventually, because I've always heard that one is really disturbing, really gross, sleazy, disgusting. This one is, I watched it a few years ago and I wasn't the biggest fan. But I figured I'd grab it because A, it was pretty cheap, and like B, the limited edition slipcover looks nice, and C, it's a cannibal film, and it's got a it's I mean it's fucking it's nice. I don't know what to say about Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals. I do like this. I guess you could say I kind of like this movie. It's not great. It's not necessarily even good, but it's extremely sleazy, and definitely one of the sleaziest movies ever made. I think up there with the likes of like The Sinful Dwarf and Blood-Sucking Freaks, and I don't know, man. Gestapo's Last Orgy. But yeah, fucking Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals, not bad, not a bad little film. Okay, no, it is a bad little film. It's actually pretty nasty and disturbing. What am I saying? We got The Peanut Butter Solution. This is like the first Severin Kids title, and I'd always wanted to check this movie out. I'd always heard it was really interesting. I saw it like towards the beginning of this year, and I was really blown away by it. I was like, God damn, you're telling me they made this movie for kids and it's got like fucking children being kidnapped by a weirdo artist who is like harvesting hair to make toothbrushes, not what am I saying, toothbrush, to make paintbrushes or something. I don't know what to fucking say about Peanut Butter Solution. It's basically a movie about a kid that gets scared by the ghosts of some homeless people who like died horribly in a fire, and that causes his hair to fall out, and then they give him a recipe for a potion, a solution that he can then put on his head, and it will make his head grow hair. But he puts too much peanut butter in it, and it's yeah, that's it. It causes his hair to grow really fucking long. It's wild. Very weird movie. Comes with this nice little card that's got the actual recipe for the solution. Not that you would want to make that. It involves dead flies and rotten eggs. But You never know. I think it's kind of a cool little thing, but still, been meaning to get this one for a while since it came out. Really liked that one. Next we got V. Finally, I'm so happy when they announced that this is not going to be that they were doing a standard edition Blu-ray. Because when they did the mid-year sale last year, and they were like, "Yeah, we got V, the famous Soviet Russian horror film from the '60s. We've got a new restoration of it." I was like, "Oh hell yeah! I've been meaning to see that." But then I was like, "Shit! I already spent a bunch of money in the fucking Vinegar Syndrome sale." Thankfully, this year they spread the sales apart by like a month, so I had a bit of time. But yeah, V is a very interesting little movie. It's based on a novella that was adapted by Mario Bava, um, as under the title Black Sunday, which is a really really great Italian horror film. It's adapted here, and I could barely see the resemblance between the two movies. They both have to do with like dead witches, and that's about it. This one is a lot more visually interesting than Black Sunday, I think, and that's mainly because this one is in color and it boasts some really wild visual effects and monster effects. I will say I did review this on my channel. My review was not super positive. I was not the happiest with how this film turned out. I will say this movie's only 70 minutes, so it's worth checking out. In general, I would recommend this to just about anybody. But especially if you like movies, especially if you like older horror films, this is like a really great overlooked title. But in my review, I said like my biggest problem is that like it doesn't get really crazy and cool until like the last like 10 minutes, and even then that's just like a 5-minute segment of this 70-minute movie. Upon rewatching this one, like as soon as I got this package in the mail, this was the one I put on immediately and watched. Rewatching it, I was like, you know what? I do like this one a little more the second time around. The scenes that I thought were a little on the boring side were a bit more interesting. And the scenes that don't have a bunch of crazy shit going on that are still like horror oriented, like the witch flying on the priest's shoulders and stuff, I found to be very, very interesting. This movie also comes with some. This Blu-ray also comes with some short silent films from the Soviet Union, from like the early 1910s. One of them is like an hour long, which is pretty cool. But that's just like a cool little bonus, a little public domain, early origins of kind of Soviet science fiction, fantasy, and horror. There's also a thing on here with a film historian talking about the history of Soviet fantasy and science fiction films, which, speaking of Soviet fantasy and science fiction films, I did recently see the fucking Andrei Tarkovsky film Solaris, which is absolutely fucking insane, and it's a really good movie. So yeah, hats off to that one. Next we got Patrick, the Blu-ray DVD. Patrick, I really like this movie. I own this one already. I own the DVD, a really, really old DVD of it. But I've always really appreciated this film. It's super, super creepy. It's basically just like the Australian equivalent of Carrie, or yeah, actually, no, Carrie is probably the best comparison I can make. It's basically about a guy who is completely comatose, and he becomes emotionally attached to a nurse at the hospital he lives in, and he starts to use his telekinetic powers to kill anybody who tries to separate him from her. The guy who plays Patrick is like absolutely amazing in it. He's like really, really fucking creepy, and his eyes are just fucking jutting fucking wide open, like bug-eyed the entire fucking time he's like on screen, and he is very, very creepy. Genuinely, I really like this movie. I'm gonna have to give this one another watch, because it's a pretty fun interesting little movie from what I remember. Also, this film was like really popular in Italy, I'm pretty sure, which resulted in them making Italy being producing the filmmaker in Italy producing a unofficial sequel called Patrick Still Lives, which I covered on my channel a few years ago, and that movie is like a weirdly sleazy like kind of continuation reboot of Patrick, basically. Um, you know, here we got Vampirus Lesbos. This is an old Severin Blu-ray. Like, this fucking Blu-ray case is thick. Not that I have a problem with that, but Vampirus Lesbos also comes with the Spanish language version of the film, which it's been a while since I've seen this one. I saw this one a few years ago and was like, yeah, that's kind of an interesting little movie. Definitely one of Jess Franco's more interesting titles. I do still prefer his Jack the Ripper film and Bloody Moon and The Erotic Rites of Frankenstein over this, but I will have to rewatch this because I do remember there being really cool aspects of it. I just kind of remember, other than those aspects, it was kind of not that interesting. But I'll have to give this one another watch. And just to reiterate it again, because I've already said it like 16 times, I'll have to give this one another watch. There we go. We got The Boys Next Door from Penelope, I think Spiritus is her name. She, Spears, I think is her last name. She's a cult film director, probably most well known for directing Wayne's World, and like I think she directed either Tommy Boy or Black Sheep. I know she did like some like Chris Farley comedy in the 90s, and also the 90s film of, what was it? God damn it. Little Rascals. I think it was The Little Rascals. I could be wrong on that. I could be really wrong on that. But I don't think I am. But she did some like interesting kind of cult films in the 90s. And in the 80s, she produced a series of documentaries, The Decline of Western Civilization, which I haven't seen yet, but they're documentaries about punk rock and metal subcultures, which seem pretty interesting. Her first film was produced by Roger Corman, and it was a film called Suburbia, which got a Blu-ray release from Shout Factory. And I've seen Suburbia. I saw Suburbia somewhat recently, and I thought it was a pretty good little kind of like, kind of vagrant teenager, like outcast, kind of thriller. Basically just about a bunch of teenagers living in a abandoned house, and because their parents have abandoned them or their parents are abusive. It's kind of sad and tragic, and definitely a really interesting watch. Their follow-up to Penelope's follow-up to that film, maybe not direct follow-up, but a film she produced after that one, is The Boys Next Door. This film, which is like Natural Born Killers, but like not as heavily promoted. Nobody really saw it. Nobody really cared about it. It had a cult following. This is its like worldwide Blu-ray debut, which I think is crazy because this film is actually really cool. It stars Maxwell Caulfield and Charlie Sheen, young Charlie Sheen too. But Maxwell Caulfield, he's in this, and he was also in Grease 2. And something interesting I heard is that, like, after that film completely fucking bombed, he was really upset about it and really angry, and he channeled that anger into his role in this film, and that's very obvious because he is absolutely amazing in this movie. This movie is like, this is one of those films that's not a horror film technically. Like, technically speaking, it's more of kind of a road movie thriller with some dark comedy elements. Again, very similar to like the Doom Generation or Natural Born Killers, although I think this is almost as good as Natural Born Killers, but a lot better than the Doom Generation. But yeah, it's basically just about two teenage boys who graduate high school and they drive out to Hollywood and they commit a series of crimes ranging from theft to assault to murder. It's a pretty gripping and disturbing and grim little film. Genuinely really cool though. Really, really, really like Boys Next Door. The director, Penelope Spears, she also did another movie after Boys Next Door, which is called Dudes, which is like a weird punk rock revenge road comedy film that's really lighthearted despite it being kind of dark. And it's literally these three guys go on a road trip, and one of them ends up getting killed by a group of rednecks, and his two friends go after them, and it's like a weird kind of neo-western film. It's very, very interesting though, and one of them dresses up like a cowboy, and the one dresses up like a Native American, and has a dream about like fucking has a dream about like fighting cowboys as a Native American. It's an interesting little movie. I really like it though. On to something that I haven't seen. Wax Mask with the slipcover. I've been meaning to see this one because this film, I'm pretty sure, is like co-written by both Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci. It's a like weird giallo film set in like the early 1900s. This movie was made in the 90s. I don't know who directed it off the top of my head, but I do know that like Fulci and Argento like helped to produce and write this film, which is really cool because those are like the two biggest Italian, most iconic Italian directors. And you know, I can dig it. I can dig that. I don't know what to fucking say. Apparently this film is like really gory, crazy, violent, which I can definitely get behind. Been meaning to see this one for a while. I remember a few years ago this got like a Blu-ray release from some company, and then it was like pulled very quickly, and now we have this Blu-ray release, which this I think came out last year. It's very similar to the situation with what was it, Blood Harvest, because Blood Harvest had a Blu-ray release through like 88 Films, and then that Blu-ray release disappeared, and suddenly the Vinegar Syndrome release comes out. Either way, though, gonna have to check out Wax Mask. Sounds interesting, looks interesting. It's like a giallo film set in a wax museum, and I love horror films set in wax museums. There's so much potential for what you could do with that kind of setting. Onto another Australian exploitation film, and another film that I already own. I'm talking about Dead Kids. Also known as Strange Behavior. That's the title I own it under on DVD. I've been meaning to see this one not see it, but I've been meaning to rewatch this one for quite a bit. Mainly because when I watched it, I was kind of expecting like a regular slasher film. I was expecting gore and tits, and this film doesn't deliver that. However, I've recently learned that this film has an original soundtrack by Tangerine Dream, which I could definitely get into, and that I've heard somebody say it's, you know, very much like early Carpenter films. It has that kind of, you know, vibe to it, and the cinematography is very similar to how Dean Cundey does his cinematography, so that's definitely something I can get into. The only thing I remember about Dead Kids is that this title of it, Dead Kids, is really fucking amazing and great, and I love this title. I love it more than Strange Behavior. And also that the film is very comparable to a slasher film from the 90s called Disturbing Behavior, which is which is a movie from the 90s that I actually really, really love. I think it's really creepy, despite it being a bit overly 90s in its presentation. But it's basically about this movie's basically about just teenagers in a town going missing, and they turn up again as deranged killers under some kind of weird mind control. Kind of like Perkins 14, that one zombie movie, if you guys know that one. Next is Asylum. This one is a fun little anthology horror film. Um, I don't think you'll ever find anybody saying that this film is amazing, but uh, it's definitely a fun movie. It's definitely great that this is finally on Blu-ray, even though this is a Severin release from a few years ago. Still, great that this is on Blu-ray. Um, the main reason that I've seen this film and know about it, and I now own it, is because there's a local horror host in Ohio called Fritz the Night Owl, and he presented this film one night on cable. This was like before I was born, and my mom would always tell me, like, yeah, it was this like British like anthology film, and this guy like kills his wife and chops her up and wraps the body parts and like, you know, wrapping like it's a butcher shop, and the parts start moving around and crawl out of the freezer. And I always wondered like what movie that was when she was telling me about it. She couldn't remember the title. I always tried to find out, you know, always wondered what that movie was. And then I found out that this was the movie, and then I eventually saw it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a fun little movie. So I bought this because I do really like Asylum. It's a solid anthology. And the one title that I was really hyped for, that, Jesus fucking Christ, this is what I waited for. This is what the pre-order was. I didn't pre-order like Demonia or the other fucking Fulci film that they had with slipcovers. I should have, but I didn't because I was like, oh well, you know, I'm not gonna wait until the 14th of June for my order to ship because that's when those releases come out. And I waited until like the fucking 15th, not even the 15th, it was the 17th of August to get my package, and I kind of regret not grabbing those titles with the slipcovers because I didn't grab them because I was like, oh, I'm not going to wait that long for these titles, but this title I will, because I was trying to get the limited edition version of this. I got the non-numbered non-numbered version of it. So I should have just added the other ones to my order, but it doesn't matter either way. I'm talking about Frankie and his pals. I watched this last night. This movie is fucking awful. I love it. It's like a weird shot-on-video monster comedy. It's like the director of it saw the Monster Squad and thought to himself, this needs more like just jokes about sex and like weird badly written like sex jokes and innuendos and a lot of farting. There's a theme song. I want to say theme song. It's not really a theme song to the film, but it's literally a song that plays in the film that describes exactly what has happened so far in the plot and what the monster's goals are. And it is absolutely god awful, and it kind of reminds me of the DK rap from Donkey Kong 64. But yeah, like this movie is like early 2000s, not early 2000s, but it's like early YouTube humor in a shot-on video film. You know, the best thing I can compare this to is like that video on early YouTube that, at least for me, was like the funniest shit ever, but I look back at it and I'm like, that was not funny at all. And it was just like a loop of a gif of a stormtrooper like humping the air, and I thought that was the absolute funniest shit in my entire life. And that's basically the humor in this film summed up. It's very just juvenile, stupid, repetitive humor that actually doubles as anti-humor. I can almost guarantee you that if you were to put this on for somebody who likes Tim and Eric, they would probably find this to be very entertaining. And I found it to be very entertaining. I'm upset that there was never a sequel, because there's a sequel hook at the end of this one. But yeah, I also just love the cover art. It's so bad. It's like bright, like the bright pink, it just really pops. And then you have the monster costumes, which just all look bad. It's something else, and I can absolutely adore every second of it. We also got, going on here, we also got this one, that's it for the Severin stuff. Now we get on to the extra stuff that I've purchased in the last couple months. A new Massacre release, finally a new Massacre DVD release. I'm talking about Love Bites, their release of the shot-on-video gay vampire comedy. This movie is pretty fun, pretty goofy. Definitely an interesting watch. It's written and directed by, I think, Mark Jones. I'm trying to find. It's literally on the cover. Marvin Jones is who wrote and directed this, and he wrote another film that Massacre released, another shot-on-video film, Venus Flytrap, which is a pretty cool little home invasion horror film, kind of like House on the Edge of the Park. This one is actually a pretty cool little movie, and this film is produced by the same guy who produced this, and this is written and directed by the guy who directed This one is written and directed by the guy who wrote this, and this is a really cool movie. This is not as good, but it's still a fun little time. I can't say that I regret purchasing it. I had a pretty good time watching it. It's definitely a gay movie. There's quite a lot of nudity. I was not expecting that. Another title we got is an out-of-print Blu-ray that I managed to get my hands on. It is Godzilla vs. Hedorah. I talked about this in my most recent video, where I talked about movies that I've used to destroy my mental health this year, and this is one of them. While this film isn't super disturbing or horrific, for a Godzilla film, it's definitely out there. It's got some weird psychedelic visuals and everything. And this Blu-ray of it from Kraken Releasing is going out of print. It's going to go out of print at least. Or I think it is actually out of print. Because of the Showa era box set that Criterion's put out, which, I've been watching quite a lot of movies on HBO Max. I've been watching a lot of Charlie Chaplin recently, finally getting around to those. I watched all of the Showa era Godzilla films on there, and this is the one that I've always wanted to check out and always wanted to see, and I genuinely really loved it. And I'm happy to have it on Blu-ray. I don't care that if it's not the same restoration that the Criterion version has. It still looks good, and I don't want to spend $160 fucking dollars on a box set from Criterion of movies that I'm only going to watch maybe one or two of them again. This one is one of those few titles. But yeah, Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Nothing too crazy, nothing too amazing. Speaking of Criterion, hit up their Barnes & Noble 50% off sale. Literally the day before it ended, I hit it up, and it was picked relatively dry. I was hoping to maybe get Sanjuro or Eating Raoul, but they didn't have any of those. But they had a couple titles that fit my aesthetic and my taste, and they're movies that I like. First is Brian De Palma's Sisters. This Blu-ray came out a couple years ago, but it's great that this is on Blu-ray. This is basically a Hitchcock film. But it's better than a lot of Hitchcock's films. It's an interesting kind of psychological horror, murder mystery type movie. Lots of really great cinematography, violent, creepy. It's got a lot going on. Margaret Kidder is in this, and she's really, really great in it. She's also very, very pretty. I always forget how attractive she was, and then I see her in Black Christmas or this, and I'm like, oh my god, she was very, very pretty. Rest in peace to Margaret Kidder. She was great. But this is an early De Palma film, before he did Carrie, before he did Phantom of the Paradise, before he did Scarface, before he did a lot of the stuff that really put him on the map. And I think this is one of his strongest films, honestly. The other Blu-ray I got from Criterion from the sale is Picnic at Hanging Rock, directed by Peter Weir. This one is a movie that I saw last year, really, really loved. It's a very vibrant and colorful movie, and it's more of a mystery kind of movie. Um, Basically, based on a novel about these girls from an all-girl school. They go for a picnic at Hanging Rock, of all places. Uh, and some of them wander off and are never seen again. And the film is about the mystery ensuing after their disappearance. And there's like weird kind of supernatural undertones to this film. There's a lot of really great atmosphere. Like, this movie is not a horror film necessarily by any means, but it's super, super creepy with its atmosphere. Like, its atmosphere is matching that of, you know, of like the original Wicker Man, or I'm trying to think of like other movies like this that I could compare it to. This is basically a folk horror film, essentially. The guy who directed this one also directed The Truman Show, the Jim Carrey film in the 90s, which is a really great little movie. He also directed a film in the 70s called The Cars That Ate Paris. I think it was before he directed this. That one's owned by Criterion, but they've only ever done a DVD release of it, and the DVD release is out of print, which sucks, because I really like The Cars That Ate Paris. It's like not really good at all. It's got a very inconsistent tone, but it's very interesting. Picnic at Hanging Rock, however, has a really great consistent tone, really great visuals, very colorful, very pretty, very atmospheric. Just love how this film looks. I would definitely recommend this if you saw like Midsommar last year. Not that this film is as crazy or out there as Midsommar is, but if you liked the visual aesthetics and the kind of folk horror kind of aspects of something like Midsommar, this is definitely a good comparison piece. I would definitely say that this and Midsommar would make a great double feature. But that is it for now. That is the entire update, and that was a mouthful. Anyway, guys, this is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.